All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, Mimi and Jen, and everyone else out there in the World Wide Web. My name's Dale Wooten. I'm an admin here for Today in Pictures, along with a few other ones out there, including Mimi and Jen. We're going to get started right away here, so you don't have to uh, look at my face, but we've got a lot to cover, and I'm just going to, for the people that don't know, I'm going to go over what Today in Pictures is. So here we go. Today in Pictures includes, and these are all Facebook pages, they include Tip 101, Tip 2, what would you do in digital photography, which I might add is going on tonight. Wednesday nights is the night that we work on a picture on what would you do. HDR Visions and Tip Sports. These 5 incorporate Today in Pictures. Every week we have in Tip 101 and Today in Pictures 2, we have challenges. In Tip 101, this past week, the challenge was rule of thirds, and in Tip 2, it was leaves. We're just going to go over quick here. In Tip 101, we're going to go over a couple that I picked out that I really liked, but wasn't the banner winner for this week. Asta Martin's daughter, excuse me if I get that wrong. It's just a gorgeous picture. I love it. With the boat overturned in the bottom left corner of the picture. Just a gorgeous picture. Great use of rule of thirds. Charles Pritchard, another great photograph that I love, with the moose again down in the lower left corner, looking into the picture and giving us a lot of room to move and look at the pine trees in the background. Judy Schneider, this is another gorgeous picture. With the big rock up in the left-hand corner and the tree in the lower left there, just kind of almost framing the hills in the background on the upper right. So good use of composition here also. And our winner this week was Mike Brown. This pretty much exemplifies the rule of thirds. You know, it's got the doorknob in the upper right-hand corner. It's got great use of detail. Good texture in the door. Just an overall awesome picture. In Tip 2, one of the ones that I liked for leaves was Michael Gibbons here. Michael has an eye similar to mine. It doesn't matter if it's a pretty flower or a weed. Everything can look good if you have the right artist behind the camera. Good job, Michael. This one by Lee Kinsella is also a very nice picture of leaves. Instead of a close-up like a lot of them that were submitted, this one is a few of them floating in water, and it just takes you right through the picture and just gives you a nice serene feel. And Miss Jen Sullivan, this one is just gorgeous. I don't know how this one actually didn't win. I love this picture. It's up to the center just enough, leads you through the picture. Great detail, and I like the dewdrops that come off the picture. Nice shot, Jen. And the winner was Nancy, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name because I'll butcher it so bad. But this one I like, and I didn't pick the 2 winners. The administrators that had that challenge for that week did. But this leaf picture is gorgeous. It brings you up from the upper left, comes out, shows great details in the leaf itself, in the veins, and just an overall good picture. I love it. This week's Today in Pictures challenges in Tip 101 is macro photography, and that will be ending tomorrow or Friday morning. So make sure you get out there and continue shooting, practicing macro photography. This is probably one of the harder challenges we have, but we've had a lot of good pictures turned in so far. So get out there and keep shooting to get that banner. There's a link there on how to shoot macro. You can actually go on and click that link, and it'll take you right to that site. And it's by National Geographic. They know a little something about photography. Tip 2 is straight lines. There's no link or anything provided here because I think everybody pretty much knows what a straight line is. And there's been some excellent shots in this challenge this week too. This ends on Saturday, so you've got plenty of time to go out there and take some more pictures and get your shots in. Today in Pictures would like to thank everyone who has participated in the challenges in both Tip 101 and Tip 2. You photographers, the ones that participate in the challenges and the ones that just put up random pictures, you're what makes the groups what they are, and that's great. I'd like to thank everybody, and I know Rick and Mimi and Jen and all the other administrators would like to thank you for participating and showing your pictures. Today in Pictures, or TIP as we call it, is a Facebook group of photographers sharing our work, encouraging each other and helping each other to improve and get better. If you'd like to join one of our pages, please feel free to come and join our family by clicking on the name of the group that you would like to join. And again, these are our clickable links, so if you would like to do that, come on in, click on the link. They'll be up there for when it's on YouTube also. So, but today's lesson is going to be basic photography. We're going to cover things like f-stops, shutter speeds, and ISO. And we're going to start today. We're going to start the lesson with ISO. Now, many might think ISO is some fancy name in photography, when it's actually stands for International Organization of Standardization. I know Mimi's had a little knowledge with this in her past experiences, but it's a worldwide organization that standardizes measurements for different branches of businesses and things like that. You can click on that link later on if you really want to know more about it. But what does it mean to us as photographers? And what it means is it's actually the sensor's sensitivity to light. The lower the value, the less sensitive, and the higher the values, the more sensitive it is to light. Before digital, BD, we had things like film. And that's an old Pentax ME Super. I actually shot with one of those. But in the day, we had film. You had to put it in, you had to go buy the film, put it in your camera. Hopefully when you put it in, the spokes didn't rip the threads there on the film. Hopefully it didn't jam in there. A lot of things could go wrong. But now we have this. This is our digital film, and it's actually called a sensor. So if you hear of a full frame sensor or a crop sensor, which we're not going to get into tonight, but that's what that is. That's a sensor. So what are the advantages of a digital sensor over film? One, you don't have to buy the film. And between buying it and developing it, those are the two most expensive things in photography. It wasn't the camera body. It wasn't the lenses. It was the film, the buying and developing of the film, or buying the equipment for the darkroom. You're not limited to 36 exposures. If anybody has shot with film before, the highest you could get was 36 exposures in the 35 millimeter rolls. You could also buy it in 12 and 24. So shooting, I shoot a lot of sports. And what I did back in high school and after high school, and you take 36 exposures, unwind it, stick it in your pocket or in your bag, stick another one in, and go. Depending where you at, you had a lot of dirty sensors, and inside your camera could possibly get dirty real easy. But the biggest one, in my opinion, is that you can change the sensitivity of your sensor, of your film, at any time, depending on when the conditions call for it. Hi, Mike. Glad you could drop in here. So now that you know what ISO is and what it does, now what? Go home? No. How do I use it? Why is it important? And how do I determine what ISU setting I use? So how to use and set your ISO. Every camera is a little bit different, so make sure you check your camera's manual on how to set it. But a lot of them will have a button on the top. Now this is the top of a Canon camera, and most of them have that button that say ISO there. And you hit that, and where it says 125, that lights up, and then you move a dial to move it. Like on this camera, that circled dial on the top is your dial on top of the camera, on top of the Canon. And that will adjust your ISO speed anywhere from 100 to 1600. I know there's cameras that go a lot higher. Mine does 32,000 ISO, which is pretty high, and there's some that go even higher than that. So why is ISO important? One, it's part of our exposure triangle. I don't know if you've heard of exposure triangles or not yet, but it includes the f-stop, the shutter speed, and the ISO. And those three combined help to properly get an exposed photograph. ISO setting also determines how strong the light is that reaches your sensor. And this is important because it will help determine your shutter speed and your f-stop later on. This one I put in there. I like some of the aspects of this. Some of them are really nitpicky, but it's good to know and go over. You know, set your ISO full sun at 100, 400 shade, 200 partial sun. But I've got my next slide here kind of describes this a little bit better. Your conditions will be on top and your ISOs will be on bottom. So if I got full sunshine, I'm going to want to set my camera or my ISO at 100. If I'm in partly cloudy conditions, then I'm going to want to set it at 200. If it's overcast, or if you're in full shade, then 400. I know a couple of the girls here like to take outdoor pictures, either early in the morning or late at night during what they call the golden hour. So sunset or sunrise, you may want to consider shooting at 800, depending on the effect you want to get. But for basics, 800 is a good place, and probably the cutoff of where I would go if you don't want a noisy or grainy picture. Indoor sports, anything low light, fast action, you're going to want to shoot at 1600. Camera I have now, the 7D Mark II, I go up to 3200, and have my high noise reduction on in my camera and still get excellent pictures at 1600 in stop action. So before we go any farther, does anyone here have any questions on what we've gone over so far? Uh-oh, you see me. Who do you see? Oh, you see me. You did. Okay. I'm way behind. But any questions so far? Am I talking too fast or going too slow, or? I see your head nodding, Jen. Okay, so we'll go on here. So now we're going to cover shutter speeds. Shutter speeds is what I like here. It's probably the easiest concept for new photographers to understand. Of the three factors, f-stops and ISOs and shutter speeds, it's probably the easiest concept to understand because you can actually see the results or the effects that you're getting. The speed of the shutter determines how long the light reaches the camera sensor. So if you've got a real slow shutter, if you want to take, say, firework pictures, or if you want to get car lights streaming by at night, you'll set the shutter to real slow using a tripod. If you want to freeze an action, say if you want to get a baseball bat hitting the ball, you know, you're going to want a higher shutter speed, like 1,000 or 2,000. Shutter speed can affect your photo by causing it to be blurry due to subject movement or camera shake, depending on the speed of what you're taking. We're going to go into that in just a second here. To also make a photo tack sharp with the proper shutter speed. You can never use too high of shutter speed to get a sharp picture, but there are minimums to it. So again, we're going to go over here and see how, again, every camera is different. So how you set your shutter speed on your camera, you'll have to look in your manual and see. But here's just a couple different ones here. This is a Pentax, and the adjustment dial is there, right there where your thumb would be, and you can see where it says 1/80. That's 1/80th of a second. Right on the verge of being handheld. You can go 1/60th, but I wouldn't go lower than that. On the Canon, it's up top, right by the trigger. I like it there. I'm used to it being there because I shoot Canon. But now that you know how to set your shutter speed on your camera, let's find out what you want to set it at and why. And now, before anybody says anything, and I know one person that would probably say something, but we won't name anybody. I did screw up on this chart. I did it late at night, and I was kind of tired when I did it. But anyway, from 1/2 to 1/8 is not going to be what we're talking about. There should be a 1/4 second in there too. So just so you know, I'm human. I screwed up. But between 1 second and 1/2 second, 1/2 second is 2 times faster. Just as 1/2 second, which should be a quarter, is 2 times faster. And 1/8 to 1/15 is 2 times faster. Now, don't ask me why between 1/8 and 1/15 it's not 1/16. Those were the Mongolian monks back in 1330 that set these up. So, but it goes on 1/15 to 1/30th, 1/60th, Again, 1/25. Those monks were playing with some numbers, just trying to make us a little confused when we go to shoot here. But you can see every stop you get 2 times faster. And what's that mean to us as a photographer? You're able to stop something that's moving that much faster with the shutter speed that's twice as fast. Now, if you go backwards, they're going to be half as long, obviously. So depending on the effect that you want and what you want to do with your shutter speed, some people, now I would guess, I haven't talked to her in depth, but I would guess Mimi likes to control her pictures with her shutter speed, or her f-stops and apertures to get a greater depth of field, and then use a tripod or a monopod to help control her shutter speed later on. But a lot of these cameras will go up to 1/4000th of a second, or even faster. So that's kind of how they work. It's actually how they work, and it helps to know what to do here. Okay, the magic number in shutter speed is 1/60th of a second, and I kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier on being handheld. 1/60th you can handheld without getting any blur or any camera shake. If you go down to 1/30th of a second, it is possible to handhold the camera. You could be supported by a wall, a tree, something like that. Make sure your body's all secure. I wouldn't suggest doing it on a regular basis, but 1/60th is your golden shutter speed. Okay, so and depending on what lens you're shooting with, if I'm shooting with a normal 50mm lens, I can shoot somebody that is sitting or reading or on the computer and not get any motion blur. 1/25th, I can get somebody out walking their dog or walking around the block or whatever. But 1/25th will freeze somebody that's walking. 1/250th, if you jog like me, that's plenty fast to stop my movement. But this is just basic guidelines. You know, some joggers are faster, some are slower. Running, 1/500th. Again, this is kind of a generalized rule. You know, some people are faster than others, but generally you can stop somebody running at 1/500th of a second. Hummingbirds, cars, baseball bats, softball bats, things like that. You can get up there at 1/1000th and higher. Some things you just need a little higher shutter speed, whether it's the hummingbird's wing. You know, you might have to go up to 2,000 or 4,000. Baseball bat, depending on the level, if you're at a little league game, you could probably get by with 1/500th of a second. So it all just depends on where you're at and what you're taking pictures of. So again, just a little break. You guys can type in your questions if you have any questions. If you have any suggestions or comments about the shutter speed. Okay, well, no questions. I guess we'll move right along here. It's going a little quicker than I thought. I thought we'd have more than what we do in the room. That might be my fault for not getting the links up fast enough tonight. I had a little internet problem, so. That's because I have my slideshow up, Mimi. I don't I'm not projecting myself, just my voice. Huh, I don't know why that is. But you can see the slideshow, right? Okay, so we're going to go on. We're going to go into apertures and f-stops. This is probably the... Okay, Mike, bring me one back, please. Coors Light if you have it. I probably shouldn't say brand names over the air, but I'll have to edit that out. But the aperture and f-stops are probably the hardest of the three elements in the exposure triangle to grasp. Because I guess I explain it as apertures are kind of like chess. They're easy to learn or to understand, but it's hard to master. Once you get the hang of using or adjusting an aperture, it will make your photography a lot more fun, and you can expand your creativity with it. You guys can see the slideshow though, right? What we're going over? Because right now I got it shared on my screen, so. But the hardest of the three elements is the amateur and the f-stops. What is an aperture? How does it work? And why is it important? Well, that's good. You can see other comments. That was kind of a concern last week. We didn't see. So, but an aperture, excuse me, is the blades that are actually found inside the lens, also called a diaphragm. And they work by adjusting the blades to let in more or less light, depending on what f-stop you actually set it at. Why is that important? Because without enough or with too much light, you'll not have a properly exposed photograph. Too much light, you'll just burn your picture up. It'll be too bright, overexposed, and if you don't have enough light, it'll be underexposed and it'll be too dark. So the f-stop changes the diameter of the iris diaphragm to control the amount of light reaching the sensor. The smaller the f-stop, the larger the opening. So I know a lot of people, always say, well, is it a large f-stop or is it a small f-stop? Just remember, when you're talking f2, 2.8, you have a large opening. So you have a larger f-stop. If you have f22, it's a small aperture, a small f-stop. It's just the opposite of what it is. I think that the Tibetan monks were going crazy with f-stops too. There's no rhyme or reason. Why didn't they make 2.8, the smallest instead of the biggest? But just remember, it's totally opposite. So when you go to shoot something, f22 is a way smaller opening than an f2.8. Adjusting or changing your aperture f-stop is, again, different on every camera, even on every brand. Canons don't always put them in the same spot. Nikons don't always put them in the same spot. So again, manual to see where they're at. I believe this is a 40D. Could be a 50D or 60D also, but the aperture is adjusted by the wheel on the Canon here. And here on the Nikon, it's up top, and you hold the button in, and then you adjust it with the wheel on the side or on the back there. So you have to do two things to adjust it on that camera. Now, as we take a closer look at our aperture and how it affects the light, that does reach our sensor. I found this online here, and it's a really good chart. It goes over, and I like to start, it goes over what they do and how they affect the picture. I actually like to start at f2, because if you start at f2, you'll realize that every aperture doubles every other time. So if you go to 2, 2.8, your next one is double 2, so it's f4, and the one after that is double f2.8, so it's 5.6, f4, f11, and so forth down the line. What that means, again, and it's very similar to the shutter speed, that f4 has half as much light, lets half as much light in as f2.8, but it also lets in twice as much as f5.6. So you have half as much light as f4, the 5.6 does, and as you can see, the diaphragm is closing. It's getting smaller and smaller. So it's letting in, every time you close it, one f-stop, one complete f-stop. With digital cameras now, you can have in between f-stops and 1/3 f-stops and stuff. But these are your basic f-stops. And you can see with a larger aperture, you have a shallower depth of field, which means, well, and we'll get into this here in the next slide. I guess I'll just wait. But a deep depth of field is at the smaller apertures, the bigger numbers, and the shallower depth of field is at the bigger apertures and the smaller numbers. So when we look at this slide here, this gentleman that's taking a picture of a bird is taking it at F, and he's taking a picture of the bird that's second from right. Now his focus is on the bird. With 1.4, you see how shallow of depth of field it is, and on both the front end and the back end. When you take a picture, it doesn't matter what f-stop that you're shooting as, your tack sharp, and then you will get 1/3 in front of and 2/3 behind, and it'll all depend on what f-stop you're using, how far that 1/3 and 2/3 is. I hope that makes sense. Okay, as you can see on the f4, he's still focused on the bird second from the right, but his 1/3 is a little farther in front, and the 2/3 is farther behind. And then the same for f22, you basically get a full depth of field. But you can't tell with the cartoon drawing. You can see on this picture here that better definition. You can go from f1.8 to, I think that's f11 on the bottom right. I'm not really sure. But again, they're using kind of funky in between, like 1.8 and f9. Those are 1/3 stops that you get on your digital cameras. Okay, does anybody have any questions on how to go about playing with their f-stops and that? I know, Jen, this would be a good one for you if you're still around, because I know how you love your walks and go out there, and if you can, it'll help with your depth of field and your close-up photography. I know, Mimi, you like to do some of your flowers and your baby rattlesnakes and things like that. I would recommend a zoom lens next time I encounter a baby rattlesnake. Okay, so with the ISO, the shutter speed, and the f-stop, now that we know that those three and how they work on their own, we're going to talk a little bit of how they work together. And this is where we talk about the exposure triangle. The exposure triangle is basically the three elements of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO working together. Because if you would say move ISO in and drop it down to 100 and it goes in toward the middle of the exposure triangle, then you either have to adjust the shutter speed or the aperture to make it a correct exposure. If I'm shooting outdoors and I know I want to shoot I'm shooting my sports and I'm shooting football, I know I have to have at least 500 shutter speed. So the first thing I'll do is adjust my aperture, which if I have to go down to 2.8, which is great, I don't mind. Still can't get the proper reading, then I'll bump up my ISO to have both sides of your triangle to get this right. Hi, Mark. I'm glad you could join us tonight. Okay. Let me get my pointer back off the second monitor there. So there's a lot. I mean, I could go into great detail, but since this is kind of a basic course, I do have about 20 minutes left to go over things. So if there's any other questions, I know I'm not completely done yet, but the exposure triangle is what you really need to, get a grasp on. And the best thing to do is just to go out and shoot. Put it in manual mode. Go out and take your sunny day. If you're going out on a sunny day, which isn't my favorite, believe it or not, I prefer overcast. And I'll go and shoot, 100 pictures. But without looking, try to adjust your aperture, try to adjust your ISO, your shutter speed. Even if you have to look, mess around with them and see the different effects. Take the picture. If you got a picture of a log extending over a river, take a picture of that same log, but adjust your shutter speed and aperture so you get different depth of fields. Start at whatever your lowest setting is for your lens, 3.5, 2.8, somewhere in there, and then take one at f8 and then f16, f22, f32, and just see what the different depth of field are. I like to do a selective focus when I go out. I'll see that log and I'll take a picture of it lengthwise in vertical format, and then I'll select different points on that log and take a picture of it. You'd be surprised how different each picture turns out, and which one, and you don't know until you get home until which one you like the best. So in wrap up, ISO is our sensitivity of light on the camera sensor. We can go back, your sunny days. It's a general rule, to set it at ISO. Again, this all depends on what you're trying to achieve with your photograph. If it's a partly cloudy day out, 200 is a suggested. Cloudy day or complete shade is 400. Daylight or twilight hours, the golden hours, some people suggest 800. And then any low light action photos, indoor photos, 1600 and above is a good place. And these are all just starting points. When I shoot my midday baseball and softball pictures, I will shoot at 800 ISO instead of 100. And I do that so I can achieve a little better f-stop and a lot faster shutter speed. That way I can shoot, instead of shooting at 1,000, I can shoot at 2,000 or 4,000 shutter speed. So I can capture that bat meeting the ball, or the ball just coming off the bat. Get the base runner sliding, and actually he's in the air before he hits the ground or the dirt's kicking up. You know, I like the faster f-stops, or the shutter speeds, excuse me. Just remember, the lower the ISO, the less grain, and the higher the ISO, the more grain. Most of the cameras nowadays, you can probably push 1600 and still get a great picture. A lot of the cameras have noise reduction menus in them, so you can turn those on, and it helps with noise reduction. It helps with the grain. Like I said, with my Mark II, my 7D Mark II, I can shoot up to 3200 or a little higher and get very little noise, very little grain in my photos. The shutter speed, it's how long the light reaches the sensor, and it affects motion. So depending on what you do, in class I just had my kids do a motion assignment where they actually had to go out and pan some cars. So you said when you pan moving objects, you set your shutter speed at a lower setting, at 1/60th, 1/125th, 1/30th of a second, depending on the speed of you're taking, and then you move along with and take your pictures that way. And that way your background will be blurry, and hopefully your subject will be tack sharp. And to me, it's probably one of the hardest aspects of photography is panning. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of dedication to get it right. I take race pictures in the summertime, and I'll shoot 1,600, 1,500 pictures a day, and I'll get 300 to 400 pictures that are good. But if you ask me, I only took 400 pictures, and they were all good. F-stop is how much light reaches the sensor. Affects the depth of field. So you can see with the depth of field, you want to go into, and actually next week we're going to, before I go into next week, we're going to be going in covering composition, and one of them has to do with backgrounds. And you know, if you don't know how to adjust your f-stop and control your depth of field, then your background will be affected, whether it's negative or positively. I've always been fascinated, my non-sports photography, I've always been fascinated with blurring the background. You know, if we go a little farther in depth with this and get out of the basics, depth of field also has to do with lens length, how long a lens that you're shooting. It's different if you're shooting a 50 millimeter compared to a 300 millimeter, and how it compresses the images and things like that. But again, that's for a later discussion when we're not just talking the basics of our camera operation and the exposure triangle here. So again, in conclusion here, today in pictures is, if you've made it this far, is a Facebook group that we call TIP. And it's a group of photographers that share our passion and our work by encouraging each other and helping each other improve to get better. If you would like to join one of our groups, and please feel free to come and join our family by clicking on the name of the group that you would like to join. There's a lot of good groups there, a lot of good people. Everybody that's here tonight that's online with me is in this group. Hopefully somebody out when they watch this on YouTube will get interested in it and say, hey, you know, I'd like to come explore this because we're only gonna get bigger and better the more people that come and join us and see this, or at least I think so, anyways. Okay, where did I go? Am I still on here, right? Where did my... All right. Well, I don't know what happened there, but I lost all my screens when I went to stop sharing my page. I was probably probably still on, but good. Now that you guys can see me, do we have any questions or anything like that? Still got just a little bit of time, so if you have any questions or comments, I'm always open for comments. Something that maybe you'd like to see in a future broadcast. Like I said, next week we're gonna go delve into the world of composition and 10 rules or guidelines of composition to help make your photographs a little bit better. No, I don't think I'm going to do that, Mimi. I'm sorry. But else, we'll just wrap this up for the night and call it good, and see what's going on here. See if I can. Well, let's see. Why is that one on there? These two screens got me all screwed up. Anyway, we'll call it a night, and obviously I need a little more practice, but we're good to go. And I'd like to give a big shout out before I leave to the Holiday Inn and Suites here in Fort Dodge, Iowa, for allowing me to broadcast from their conference room tonight due to my lack of stable internet at home. So I'd just like to say thanks to the Holiday Inn and Suites in Fort Dodge for letting me use being so kind and letting me use their conference room with no charge. So, no questions, comments, anything like that? All right, well, everybody have a good night, and I will see you next Wednesday night here at about the same time. So, have a good night, and see you later.